amazing tales. Next guest has quite a story to tell, having developed full-blown drug and alcohol addiction, spending his 18th birthday in Parramatta Prison, later escaping from Silverwater Jail. Danny Shannon has now turned his life around. It is 13 years clean. He uses his sobriety to help other addicts in recovery and people suffering from mental health issues through his social media, NDIS workshops, and his digital time capsule platform, Encapsulator, which we'll find out more about very soon. Danny Shannon, thank you for making your time tonight.
Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for the introduction. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here, mate.
Oh, that's good. Danny, we find you in Sydney, do we?
Yes, coming to you live from Sydney. That's right. Thank you, Andrew.
That's good. And your life obviously is so much better. 13 years without addiction.
Yeah, Andrew, I often say, and this is so true, like I love my life. I love my work. I probably smile way too much, and it's my job as a man in recovery and also just a human being to try and carry a message of love and hope to anyone out there struggling. So, yeah, I'm incredibly blessed. Life is really good, clean and serene from drugs and alcohol, mate.
Yes, I imagine it would be. Tell us about this. Obviously, we can't have every aspect of it.
Sure.
How did the dark years start?
Sure. So, all right, Andrew. Yeah, look, I'll wrap it up in a few minutes. I picked up drugs and alcohol at the age of 14. I started on drinking alcohol. I got stoned on some pot, marijuana, and that was I was about 14. I was at this outdoor roller skating ring. I remember sort of waking up. I was hanging out with some older people as well. And I remember sort of passing out, getting blind drunk, and seeing this outdoor roller skating rink, some broken glass around, a few bodies laying around. And I remember that day sort of coming to thinking, wow, that was mad. Let's go again. So that was my introduction to it. My mum and dad had kind of tried this last hurrah to go up to Bundaberg and try and work things out between them. There was a bit of a broken relationship between them, and me and my sister. Well, I certainly was good at manipulating the system. I ended up encouraging my mum just to go back to Sydney and leave me up there with my dad because things weren't really working out for them. And she did that, actually. She took my sister. So then I was left to my own devices up in Bundy. My dad used to travel a lot overseas. Every time he'd come back from an overseas trip, we'd be kicked out at another apartment. And sure enough, after 3 occasions, he moved back to Sydney. And then I was really just left to my own devices. I picked up speed, LSD, cocaine, magic mushrooms by this stage. So that's kind of how I got involved in, Andrew.
Yeah. So it was a dysfunctional family, I'd be fair in saying, wouldn't I, Danny?
You know what, Andrew, let me say this. I've got this beautiful, loving mum, right? I honestly think my mum taught me all my values, all my morals. My mum is awesome. Now, my dad is awesome too, but his nickname's Shonky. Everything I know good, I learned from my mum, and basically everything I know shifty, I learned from my dad. So beautiful family, absolutely. But maybe, yeah, I mean, who has a functional family these days? I don't want to place, but yeah, you might call it that, Andrew.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, sure.
I have to ask, how's your sister's life turned out?
Yeah, mate, she never went down the same path. And it's a great question because, like mum and dad, neither of them had addiction issues. There might be some addiction in my mum's mum. And I'm only mentioning that because, we often hear this thing that people, it comes through the family, it's a family disease or something. But basically what happened to me is I picked up drugs at 14 and I just never stopped. I don't know where it came from, why it happened to me, but I think I just kind of loved it so much and I just couldn't put it down. But my sister, to answer your question, has gone on to build a career. And so have I, but different lives, I guess. She turned out great.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Did you manage to hold down jobs during this time you were addicted?
Andrew, I should say at 16, I picked up heroin, or 15, late 15, I picked up heroin for the first time. And previous to this point, right, it's like I picked up all those other drugs I mentioned. They're kind of party drugs, speed, LSD, ecstasy. But it wasn't until I picked up heroin for the first time around about my 16th birthday that stuff really went downhill. Up until that point, things were kind of manageable. I certainly had been kicked out of school, I should say. I got kicked out of school, and I wasn't working. I did have a job in my younger years working at some kind of a factory, but by the time I picked up heroin, that was kind of the beginning of the end. I remember sitting in this dingy little flat in Cabramatta, and the drug dealer injected me with heroin for the first time. And if up until that point stuff had gone bad, like it was really just about to start, So the next 17 years, I certainly was employed at times, but let me tell you, Andrew, I certainly was not a good employee. I was probably stealing from the employer, and you can guarantee I was stoned at work. So those jobs never lasted long, that's for sure.
It's your stories, and we're hearing the bad but inspirational, get to the inspirational part of it.
Sure.
The story of Danny Shannon right after these. In part 10, we're speaking in this section on this of your stories to Danny Shannon, who's had quite a wild ride of a life with addiction at a very young age, and ending up as a guest of Her Majesty, Parramatta Jail. Now, tell us, let's get to the positive part here, Danny. Let's talk about getting yourself out of this hole that you've got yourself in. When does it start? How does it start? Is there a particular day?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I love sharing this story. Let me tell you, like, through all that period of 17 years of the addiction, I attempted to get clean many, many, many times. Like I mentioned, I had this beautiful mum who was kind of always on my back to get some help. But what would happen is I'd go into detoxes, I'd go into rehabs, and I'd basically have a feeling. I'd straighten up, like I'd usually go into those places stoned or high, and I'd straighten up and I'd leave. I'd pack my bags and I'd leave. And I honestly had about 49 attempts at rehabilitation. That includes all the detoxes, rehabilitations. I was known by a first name basis at St. Vincent's Hospital, Parramatta Hospital. So, mate, on my last attempt, but I went to a program at St. Leonard's Hospital, and I put down the drugs for the first day on the 15th of September 2009. I managed to get to about 60 days clean that time, right? And I had done that before, and it was Christmas Day. Andrew, I want to share this story. If it was Christmas Day, Christmas just gone 13 years ago, I went home on a day leave from rehab to go visit the family. Now, to be honest, I wasn't really keen on going home because I got a lot of shame and guilt. I was amazing the family was even invited me home, but I'm sitting around a table with 13 family members, neighbors, people that I've all hurt, stolen, probably robbed in some way, shape, or form, and just that shame and guilt. And they're all trying to be nice, the poor Danny, the sick drug addict. I'm sure there's no real nastiness, but actually, Andrew, that day on my way home back to rehab, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I had 60 days clean, and I was at the turning point, mate. I was standing at Town Hall Station, and to my right was King's Cross. I knew 100% if I walked up there, I'd be able to buy my heroin and my coke, and I'd fill that void I was feeling right at the time. I had cash in my back pocket, but that day, across the road was a bus stop, and that bus was the 431. That bus was going to take me back to rehab. And that day, for the very first time in my life, I actually had decided to get on, but I thought, you know what? Some of that consequential thinking kicked in. And I thought, if I do get on, I know what's going to happen. I'm probably going to end up back in jail, maybe back in rehab, maybe dead. But if I got on that bus and went back to rehab, I didn't know what was going to happen. And for the first time in my life, that day, I made a different decision. I didn't pick up that first drug, and I got on the bus, and basically one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. From there onwards, I've continued to move forward. I'm currently 13 years, 3 months, and about 15 days clean and sober. And do you know what? A miracle happened that day, Andrew. Is I had lost the obsession and compulsion to use. I never came close to using again since that day. It was like, it was like, yeah, it really was, mate. Yeah.
Now helping, of course, other addicts. You've got all sorts of platforms to do that, but you've got to tell us about the Encapsulator, not the
Sure.
Encapsulator. I've never heard of this.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So I celebrated a big milestone at about 6 years clean. And I thought to myself, I wonder what I was like back when I first entered recovery. And I came up with this concept to record a video message to my future self for my 10-year birthday. It was a bit ambitious at the time because we always talk about keeping it in the day, but I did a little bit of research on some questions that you might answer when talking to your future self. I started the camera rolling. I started answering those questions, and immediately I found this really unique, therapeutic, weird process of me talking to my future self. I started talking about some stuff I'd never spoken about before. Like, for example, I thought about my mom, my dad in 5 years' time, my son, the relationship with my son. And at the same time, I also thought this would be an amazing tool for the clients I was working with in the drug and alcohol space to be able to measure their growth from the time they enter to maybe 1 or 2 years down the track. And then I went for a trip to America where I met a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, and I came back and I developed Encapsulator. So we provide time capsule video programs allowing individuals like you and me to capture the essence of who they are today, identifying their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and their future aspirations. And this all gets recorded, locked away into our secure time-locked vault, waiting to be discovered at a date that you choose in the future. Andrew, that's our time capsule programs.
Sounds wonderful and a great idea, great concept, especially for those with addiction problems who have recovered. How have you looked at your time Encapsulator?
Absolutely. It gave me goosebumps, and I've heard some incredible feedback from quite a few participants who recorded their message of love and hope to their future self. You know, I created that first one back in 2016. I only viewed it last year after 5 years, and it gave me goosebumps. Like, I looked quite different. All of my goals that I'd talked about in that video have basically come true. And you know what, the biggest goal, Andrew, was just to be alive and to be still in recovery. You know, I've built this incredible relationship with my family, this beautiful relationship with my son. My daughter wasn't even born back then, so I didn't even know about my daughter, who's one of the most precious things in my life today.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, so incredible.
That's wonderful. Speaking with Danny Shannon, founder of Encapsulator, how can people in need, or have family members who may be in need, get involved? How can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. There's so many ways you can contact me. You can contact me on Facebook, on TikTok, or on YouTube under Danny Shannon. And I can also be, and I've got a little blue tick on Facebook, so I should come up #1 in your search results. And send me a message there, absolutely, under Messenger, and I'll respond to every single message. I can also be found on LinkedIn as well under Danny A. Shannon.
That's wonderful. The question should have been, where aren't you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. Andrew, should I mention that? So we're also, for families affected from the mental health stuff, we're also running some Encapsulator-led NDIS workshops as well, if you'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, perhaps if people could contact you with
Sure.
Facebook and find out a bit more about that.
Sure.
We're running a little short of time, Danny.
No worries.
Your story is inspiring. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Andrew.